faculty, staff, and students at the New Hampshire Institute of Politics at St. Anselm College, I would like to welcome you and thank you all for coming tonight. The Institute's mission is to educate, engage, and empower citizens of all ages to actively participate in the civic and political life of their communities and strengthen democracy. The Institute is a nonpartisan organization and does not endorse political issues or candidates. Before we begin this evening's program, I'd like to remind you to turn off all cell phones and any other devices that make noise. Tonight's event features Mr. Tom Steyer, founder of Need to Impeach as well as Next Gen America, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting progressive climate and social justice policy initiatives. Tom will sit down with Josh McElveen of McElveen Strategies to discuss why he believes impeachment is a critical step in addressing distrust in our democracy. Mr. Steyer will address the roots of this distrust and lay out the essential elements of creating a positive agenda for the 21st century. Mr. Steyer was the founder and co-managing partner of Farallon Capital, one of the most successful investment firms in America. He saw firsthand how our economic system failed working people while helping those at the top. Believing we have a moral responsibility to each other and to give back, he left his company and began working full-time to guarantee every family shares the benefits of economic opportunity, education, and a healthy climate. In 2010, Mr. Steyer and his wife signed the Giving Pledge in order to donate half of their wealth to charity within their lifetime. Josh McElveen is familiar to New Hampshire residents, having served as a political director and anchor for the legendary WMUR TV, an ABC-affiliated television station located in Manchester. Following the discussion, there will be a brief question and answer period, during which time I ask you to please wait for the student ambassador with the microphone to reach you before you ask your question. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Tom Steyer and Josh McElveen.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Oh, it's already on. How you doing?
No complaints.
I just got to tell you, Mr. Steyer, first thing I went in there to introduce myself. He said, "Call me Tom," and we haven't stopped talking since about a wide range of topics. Welcome to New Hampshire, first of all. And you told me that I learned something about you right out of the gate. You went to high school in New Hampshire, which I wasn't aware of. Tell us about that experience.
So I grew up right in the middle of New York City. I am the youngest of 3 boys, and my 2 older brothers went away to school, went in 9th grade. So when I got a chance to go to a boarding school and not be the only kid at home with my parents, and actually be in a place with a lot of fields and girls, it was like one of the best things. That everyone else was at school thinking, this school is really hard. We have 6 days of classes per week. And I was like, there are girls in this school. There are fields at this place. You have no idea how great this place is. And my parents aren't there at dinner with only one child going like, so how was your day, Tom? One of the happiest days of my life.
Did you get to experience the primary at all, the New Hampshire primary? Because I know the age that you were at.
Right.
Maybe
So I'm class of 75 in high school. So we had people coming through for the 76 election. So, you know, as you guys know, being in New Hampshire, everybody comes to New Hampshire, and everybody came to New Hampshire in those days too. So it's embarrassing how much was available and how little I took advantage of, honestly. But everybody came through, and everybody speaks at Exeter because they have a big auditorium, and so people from around that part of New Hampshire can all come, and they can hold, 1,000 people or something like that.
Well, obviously, you have, congratulations on all your success, first of all. Congratulations on all the things that you do that you believe in and feel passionately about, because I think that all of us can relate to at least wanting to try to make a difference, and certainly you're trying to. And that's something that should be,
the
commended.
funny thing, so I ran an investment business. I went to Stanford Business School, and I ran an investment business for, I think, 27 years. And the funny thing, and I decided, wow, it seems as if there's another part of me that I'd like to express that has to do with, my sense that how lucky I am, and I'd like to give back some of the grace that I received being a kid in the United States with family that took care of me and got all the good luck of being an American and also good luck of being in a family that really took care of me. But the funny thing is, being involved full-time in politics for the last 6.5 years, the lessons I've learned are the exact opposite of what people tell you American politics about. The first thing is, the only thing that I think works in American politics is telling the truth. I mean, and that's the last thing people think about. That's the only thing I believe in. And the second thing I believe in is people see you for who you are in American politics. It's a really invasive situation, and you're going to be exposed for who you are, so you might as well own who you are. So actually, one of the pleasures of doing this has been being forced to face who I think I am. To accept my good sides and my bad sides. And that is not what they tell you in American politics. It's supposed to be the exact opposite. You should be BSing people all the time.
I'm glad you brought that up. And we'll get to the kind of the big issue in a minute, but I want to ask you about the New Hampshire primary, because you talk about politics not really showing who you are. Well, here in New Hampshire, we kind of do things a little bit different way because of the primary, but it's under fire all the time. People don't think we deserve it. People don't think that we're diverse enough, big enough, whatever the argument is. What do you think about New Hampshire's place in the process? And do you think that anything does need to be changed? Because there's a growing number of people out there that do.
Well, I think that there are people who are jealous of New Hampshire because you guys actually do have an embarrassment of riches when it comes to political exposure. People do come through. Everybody comes through. Everybody, I think, comes through this room specifically. And so you're really lucky. But the other thing that's really true about people in New Hampshire and in Iowa is that you take your responsibilities really seriously. I mean, I was here on campus today trying to get students to sign a petition. And I asked them about what they're doing, and they all were paying attention to who the candidates were in the presidential primaries and kind of shopping around and having opinions, but spending real time and energy on it. And so I do think that New Hampshire has a special place, but I also think you've kind of earned it and you take it really seriously. So
I'd like to think
I think
that's
for
true.
people who
definitely.
are resentful, it's kind of like, actually,
It's an important process. I mean,
it is
right.
and it's. I believe that the truth does come out, and part of that is the citizens taking it really seriously and paying attention.
Thank you for saying
I
so.
think you do.
Let's talk about Donald Trump, because that's obviously why a lot of people are here. I mean, you're not here like most of the Democrats are in New Hampshire right now, who would like to unseat him kind of the old-fashioned way. I mean, it depends on how you want to look at it. You think he needs to go. But then the Mueller report came out, because you had been pointing to collusion with Russia and some of the things that a lot of people felt were definitely going to be, come to light in the Mueller report. But a lot of people were disappointed that that didn't happen, and Donald Trump claimed that as a victory. Yet you still think he needs to go. Fundamentally, why?
Well, let's stop for 1 second and go back a little.
Sure.
We spent a whole year saying we don't need to wait for the Mueller report. The things that are obvious in the public record is that he's corrupt and that he's obstructed justice. So we want to get the Mueller report. We look forward to the Mueller report, but we know from the public record that he's corrupt and that he obstructs justice.
I got to hold you to the New Hampshire standard. Define corruption and sure.
Okay, corruption. Okay, they're the parts that have come out through testimony that he's been involved in felonies while he's been in the White House. And so that is working in terms of signing money to these women to pay them off to keep silent while he was president, which is against the election laws, which is a felony, which is part of why Michael Cohen is going to jail for 4 years. His lawyers reviewing Michael Cohen's false testimony in front of Congress, which is a felony, which is why Michael Cohen is going to jail for 4 years. But the other thing that's true, and the thing that actually really gets me the most, so yes, that's unacceptable. He also takes money through his real estate operation from foreign governments. And you can go back and look. Last week, the daughter of the president of the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is one of the most corrupt countries in the world, bought a $7 million condo from Mr. Trump. Now, does he care if somebody gives him $7 million? I would ask you, would you care if someone gave you $7 million? And it's directly in the Constitution. No president can take any payment from a foreign government. for obvious reasons. We don't want to ask why he has a policy towards Saudi Arabia. We don't want to have to figure out whether they rent floors from him in the Trump Tower or rent rooms from him in the Trump Hotel. He shouldn't have any business relationship. He should not be taking any payment from foreign governments, and that's in the Constitution with those words.
Technically, you could say that he doesn't, because of his kids taking over the business and a trust
his
was
money.
established.
It's his money.
Sure, but there's a shade of gray. I think you would agree.
No,
I mean,
absolutely not. If you give me $7 million and tell me I don't care, my answer is, okay, I'm superhuman. Everyone else would care. There's no technical here. There is a question about whether you're taking money from a foreign government. It's unacceptable. It's not, there's no shade of gray. Corruption is corruption. You look at what he does in terms of these countries, we should never have to ask why the President of the United States is acting towards a foreign country. The answer should be for the American people. That's why I'm doing it, period. And we've seen him, we haven't got, to be fair, we don't have the Mueller report. The Mueller report is going to come out in some form or fashion in 2 days. And the question is, are we going to get the Mueller report? Because what we have is Mr. Trump's lawyer's version of the Mueller report. What we've been asking for is, for the whole time that we've been saying he should go, we've been saying, give the American people the truth and let us decide.
and by
That's
his
what we
lawyer,
want.
you mean?
Yeah, the so-called Attorney General. Okay. But what we're saying is, I don't care about, I want you guys to get the information. I want hearings so the people in this room and across America can judge for themselves. We've had one real hearing on this, which was Michael Cohen. And the other real hearing we've had in the last 12 months, which people saw very differently, which is fine with me, was Brett Kavanaugh. I want the American people to see on TV what the truth is and make up our minds. And I will trust the American people of all political stripes. I want the democracy to work. And I want us to participate in it. And I don't want people in DC to tell us what we can hear. I want us to get to decide.
Are you concerned about the potential for backfire? When this, let's say that the Mueller report is released in its entirety, full, and it absolves Donald Trump and his campaign, or whoever you want to extend that to, of any criminal wrongdoing. I mean, suddenly now it becomes more politics than it does really what you're speaking to, corruption, the character of what a lot of people think that the office of the president should represent, and right now a lot of people think that that doesn't get represented. But
am I worried about him being absolved? No.
as far as what your argument is, as far
No,
as your
look, the only things is it is going to deal with obstruction of justice. We've all watched the president try to obstruct justice for over a year and a half. You know, he did fire the head of the FBI for wanting to investigate him about Russia. He has done innumerable things in the public record on TV to try to intimidate people about testifying under oath to his own Justice Department. I was sitting here waiting to come on, and on TV, it was said that the president is going to be furious at anyone who's a White House aide who testified. That they said they fear the wrath of Trump. And my point is, isn't that what mob bosses do? That they call people rats who testify under oath about the truth? That's not what the President of the United States does. The President of the United States should not be scared of people telling the truth about what they've done. He runs the Justice Department. You're not supposed to intimidate people and scare them about testifying. That's what mob bosses do. They call them rats. That's what he does.
And by that definition, the Attorney General will be a mob captain to a certain degree.
Look,
Well, I mean,
he is supposed to be representing the people of the United States, not the President of the United States. He's supposed to be our Attorney General. This is about, look, I think there's a real question here, Josh, about democracy. And this is not a partisan question. This is a question about the American people taking back the democracy. And it goes specifically to this issue, but it goes way beyond this issue. If you go around this country, 80% of Americans think that this democracy has been bought out from under us. That the rich people and the rich corporations and the interests get their way, and that people don't actually serve the people of the United States. 80% of Americans. So that means everybody. That's Democrats, Republicans, Independents feel as if The people who are supposed to be serving us have higher interests that involve special interests who are going to get them elected.
Fair to say that the people that elected Donald Trump wouldn't be considered the top 1%. I mean,
They think this. Look, that's my point.
which is why we saw what happened in 2016 happen.
Absolutely.
Right.
This is not a partisan issue. That's my point is, look, we all learned in 4th grade of, by, and for the people. That's what the democracy is. I believed it. That is what it's supposed to be. That is actually what I think we get the best answers from. That's what I believe in. The American people are smarter in group than anybody else.
So let me ask you a two-part question, and then I'll zip it for a while. How far will you take? I mean, obviously, you're out there and you're raising the awareness of what you think should happen. A lot of people, how many people have signed the petition who agree with you? Almost 8 million people. How far will you take this effort to impeach Donald Trump from the White House and the presidency? And why not do it, again, I guess the old-fashioned way? Like I said, a lot of people thought you'd make a great candidate, if not a great president. Why didn't you take that route?
Well, there's something to be caught. There's a cost to not doing the right thing. And I felt at the beginning of this year when I was trying to figure out what the best thing to do is, that if you have values and a constitution and laws, if you don't stand up for them under the gun, you don't really have them. And so if we decide for whatever reason that we don't apply justice to the richest and most powerful people, that we only apply it to people who it's easy to apply it to, which is people who aren't that well-to-do, people who are under the gun, then we are admitting that we're an unfair society, an unjust society. And I think if you say the president's above the law, it's fine. He's committed criminal acts, he's corrupt, he's obstructed justice. Let's move on. You're making a statement about values, not just for this president, but for every president. It's a precedent, and it's a statement about who we are. And if one of the things that I thought was upsetting for a lot of Americans was the college admissions scandal. That people were furious about that. And why are you furious about it? You're furious because you think the rich and powerful cheat. They get to cheat the system. They get what they want. And it's not fair. And that's the point of here, too. Is the president above the law, or are we going to do... If he's taking money from foreign countries, he should not be the president. It's not a close call. If he's going to obstruct justice and try to prevent the pursuit of our laws and our Constitution, that's not an okay thing. And if we decide it is an okay thing, then it's an okay thing for every president going forward. And we've made a statement about who we are. And I honestly, truly believe that we've got to return this democracy to the American people. And I think we'll get different answers about what to do. And I think they'll be way more just and way smarter.
Will you, obviously, there's been a lot of talk about certain members of the House who have resisted, let's put it that way, this groundswell that's starting. 8 million people, as you said, pointed out, including the House Judiciary Chair, what's his name? Nadler. How aggressive will you be? And I mean, you're talking about this being a democracy, and I believe that it doesn't matter whether it's Democrat or Republican. It's about democracy. Will you go after fund primaries, for instance, that will go after those who seem to turn a blind eye, regardless of what party?
One of the things that's going to be true. Let me say what we've done in those instances, because we've actually, for instance, there is a congressman from the 1st District in Massachusetts, Congressman Neal, who's the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, and who has the ability to request Mr. Trump's taxes, which he did this month, but which he waited 3 months to do. And so we did a town hall in his district. We sent 92,000 emails to him. They might have even been handwritten, I'm not sure, but we literally 92,000 people sent him a note saying, please ask for the taxes. We went door to door in the district. We have 25,000 people in his district who've signed our petition. We did a poll to show how much his constituents support getting Mr. Trump's taxes and pushing for for open disclosure. So we will try and show people where they stand. At some point, realistically, we know there's not enough time left to impeach. At some point, this is going to be something that practically can't happen. and that's just a fact of life, and we're not going to pretend that's not a fact of life. It is.
You know-
That's
you know
why
what-
we're trying to get the show on the road.
You know what there is time for, though? I mean, it's a long, you're in New Hampshire, I gotta ask this question, it's a habit. Is there any way you would reconsider a presidential candidacy?
So let me answer that question with a little history. I started an organization called Next Gen America. We did the largest youth voter mobilization in 2018 in American history. We're on 18 campuses in New Hampshire. We're on 420 total campuses. We're in 18 campuses in New Hampshire, and we've been on those campuses since 2014. So I am in New Hampshire. I did go to high school here, but I've also been here numerous times over the last 6 years because we understand this is a swing state. Not just an important presidential state, but a swing state, a true purple state in every sense of Congress, legislature, Senate, governor, president. This is a swing state in the United States of America, and we've organized here forever. What I have said, and the reason what I decided in the beginning of this year when I said we're going to push for impeachment, and that's what I'm going to do personally, was I will do anything that I think will have the most positive impact on this system because I believe we're in a crisis. I think a lot of people, including the people that Josh is talking about in DC, would like you to believe that it's business as usual in the United States politically. And I absolutely don't believe that. I believe that we're in a crisis. I believe that this election will show how much of a crisis we are truly in, and it will be resolved. I think it will be surprising to everybody how emotional this election is, how much people feel is at stake on both sides, and a real question of whether we can have a positive vision together that pulls us together, or if we just continue to be separated. And I think that if we continue to be separated, that is a really dangerous thing for the United States of America, really dangerous. And that if that's the way we go, then after this election, we're still going to be in a lot of trouble. So I think this election I think we're in crisis, and this election can either help resolve that crisis or help exacerbate that crisis.
I won't engage in hypotheticals, but that was a really interesting answer, and we'll come back to that. So let's talk about this current field, assuming that Donald Trump is not impeached and he does run for re-election. We have a field of...
He's definitely running.
Sure. I would think so.
He started running the day he was inaugurated, maybe before.
Maybe so, maybe so. The field's up to what? 18, 19, last count.
But it's going higher.
Yeah. But you know what? I mean, the knock on a lot of these candidates is the Bernie Sanders progressive movement that we saw 4 years ago here in New Hampshire. I mean, it was amazing to see. I mean, it was just a groundswell of support. And it almost seems like that's expired so quickly, and now everyone's, you know the term, move left to Bernie Sanders. Oh, my goodness. Is there a danger, do you believe, for what you think is important to this country, that this field is either A, too far to the left, too progressive, too socialist, however you want to characterize it, and that will lead to party infighting that ultimately winds up a second term for this incumbent president?
So let's go back to 16, if you don't mind. I thought Bernie did us all a huge favor, whether you were for him or against him. I think Bernie did us a huge favor as a country because what he brought up was the inequity in our system. And people had missed somehow, Democrats had missed the point that all of the additional productivity in American society since 1980 went to the top 1%. All of it. That wages were flat for 2 generations. How could the Democratic Party miss that? So I will say, as somebody who definitely was a beneficiary of that skewing, it's really un-American. If you look prior to that, productivity in America basically got split pretty much 50-50 between working people and owners of capital. Those are fancy words. It's like employers and employees. It was literally 50-50. And starting in 1980, it went 100-0. Now, there are a bunch of reasons for that, but it was a political choice by the United States, and Bernie brought it up, and bless him for doing it. And really, that's what Mr. Trump was running on, was being overlooked, not having a positive economic outlook, feeling like the system itself overlooked and didn't respect people. That was really what he was running on, was the resentment about, worried about the future and being overlooked and disrespected. But I thought Bernie did that. Now, I think he brought it up, and it was true, and now everybody wants to say it. And you're right, there are a whole bunch of people, and if you look issue by issue, who are basically mirroring or copying what Bernie Sanders had to say. And there's this whole question, not so much, it's issue by issue, and no candidate's policy on Medicare is going to be the way it ends up. It's going to be a long conversation. To the extent it gets changed, it's going to be a long conversation, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen soon. And the same thing is true on all these issues. But what you can see coming forward is this question, and I don't understand it, about socialism. And so let me say this. I spent 35 years in the private sector. I'm a Stanford Business School graduate. I have a strong opinion about what prosperity looked like and what prosperity that is just looks like. And so I think we've spent too much time being focused just on overall growth and not talking about who gets the benefit of that growth, and I think that was Bernie's point. But I think if someone could explain to me what the word socialism means, I could give you a strong opinion about it one way or the other. Because I think we have a system that actually is very productive, but that has distributed the benefits of that productivity extremely unfairly, and to the extreme detriment of working people. And I think that when I look at American history, I see, I can't, it's hard for me to even talk about it. So Josh was a Marine. I don't know if you guys know that. People have been sacrificing dumb kids like Josh. Wow, they don't want me to say this either.
There we go. You're on it.
Are we okay, you guys?
It leaned against the.
Oh, I was going to say, God, are you speaking to me on this point?
I know.
Are we okay? There we go. So, good now, I feel better about saying it. Look, people in the United States have been sacrificing their lives for this system for centuries. You can go back 800 years and see uneducated young people giving up their literal lives for the system we have. So when someone thinks that they earned what they got, my answer is, really? Because there is some dumb kid who died 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 400 years ago to create a system so you could succeed. So if you think you did it on your own, you're not paying attention to what Josh did. But you're not paying attention to what thousands and millions of kids did to create a system for all of us. And so I do not think it's fair to take the working people who still create the value in this country, who have created the value in this country, who've created the system for everybody to do okay, and not support them and not give them a fair share. It's not right.
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that.
It is true. I mean, you must feel that really hard.
Sure. I mean, listen, you talk about some of the things that a lot of veterans have gone through, and I look at them. I was in Operation Desert Shield in the Air Wing. I appreciate you saying it, though, but a lot of people did sacrifice a lot so that we could sit here and talk about this conversation. Everything.
And if you see people,
so, yes.
I'm from California, and we do really, really, really well on information technology. And a lot of the people in that business think they created it and they live in cyberspace and nobody gave them anything. And I'm like, really? Because if we went back to a state of nature, there is a guy who weighs 50 pounds more than you, who has 75 lower IQ points, who would kick your ass at lunch. So if you really think you did everything yourself and you want to go back to the cave, I would suggest it might not be that great for you.
I'm resisting the temptation to ask you questions like I would a candidate.
Dude,
You're
lay
talking
it
about
on
your
me.
economic policy. I mean, we're going to get to the audience in a minute, but let's talk about the working class.
I spent 35 years in the private sector investing around the world. I have spent so many days, weeks, months, years looking at what makes success and what makes just success and broad-based success.
So let me ask you.
I spent my entire professional life doing that.
Bernie Sanders, I can't remember, the 52%, anyone making over $1 million, pay hefty tax. I think the number it threw out was 52. I mean, that seems like a disproportionate number, but maybe that's also meant to send a message a little bit. Where is the middle ground in this area when you talk about the income disparity, and how do you break through it? I mean, because a lot of people point to unions, other people will point to big government, others will point to just say no to everything, Washington, D.C. crowd. Where do you start?
Look, we've had 40 years of attacking the rights of working people, and it's really broad-based. Some of it is trying to prevent people from organizing. And if you think about it, step back for 1 second, think about going down to Walmart and think, okay, I'm going to do a negotiation for my salary at Walmart. I'm going to walk in and say, whatever they're offering, $10 an hour, I won't do it, I want 14. It's like, end of conversation. You have no negotiating power. If you think, in a lot of the companies in America, when you sign up, you give away your right to sue if they do something wrong. You can only go to, So my point is, there's been a series of decisions over decades to take away the power of working people. The government has decided, and it was a philosophical change, that taxes are bad, government is bad. I mean, Ronald Reagan was a genius communicator. I mean, I thought one of the most brilliant things he said was, the scariest words in the English language are, I'm here from the government and I'm here to help. That convinced everybody that it was funny. And he probably delivered it 1,000,000 times better than me. And we've spent 40 years thinking government doesn't matter. Look, if you go to the states that are controlled by Republicans, governor, both parts of the legislature, they all cut taxes and they all cut education. And if you think about the 21st century and what it'll take for people to succeed, for the young people sitting in the front, the idea that you guys could succeed without being educated in the 21st century, which is a global century, where you're competing with every kid around the world, the idea that your society would not see it as job one to help you guys succeed, which helps the society succeed, seems to me incredibly short-sighted. The idea that we'd be taking money away from education and support as opposed to pouring money into it so that young people could achieve and that could lead the society to new and better places. For instance, in Oklahoma, I don't know if you guys know this, they've cut education spending so much that in some of the public schools, they do 4-day weeks. They couldn't afford the 5th day. They cut OU, which is their premier university, Oklahoma University, by 23% last year. It's kind of like, how could that be a recipe for success? So when I think about where we're going economically, I think about how do you create prosperity, first of all, in the real world. And I think it's clear that you do it by being excellent at things and competitive and actually doing a great job and specializing. And then the second question is, how do you distribute that fairly? And the way you distribute it fairly has a lot to do with taxes, but has more to do with wages. To me, and this is another question. You really want to go into this? I'm so fascinated by this, you guys. Look, we spend twice as much on healthcare as any other country in the world, and we don't have better healthcare. Those are just the numbers. I mean, you can look at England, France, Germany, Japan, any highly developed country and see what they spend, and they spend half as much as us on average. And they have every bit as good or better healthcare. What that means is, okay, partly we're wasting $1.2 trillion or something, a huge amount of money, wasting. But the second point is, it's coming out of the pockets of working people. So if you go, I remember walking on a walkout, a strike line in Sacramento, California, with some people from the Communication Workers of America. So there's nothing to talk about except the strike, right? So I said to you guys, what's the negotiation? And they said, basically, they're offering us 2% increases per year, but they're asking us to put up more money for our health care and to have bigger deductibles and bigger copays. So I said, okay, I okay at arithmetic. Let's figure out how much that actually cost you. And it turns out the increase in their proposed healthcare costs per dollar was more than the 2%. The healthcare costs are killing the ability of working people to get a real raise. And it's incredible. And if you care about math, a compounding problem like that just keeps going and going and going eats you up more and more and more. Compounding as an investor is magic, but this is black magic. This is magic where the compounding of health costs used to be health was 5% of the American economy. Now it's 18 to 20%. And it's growing. So the cost of healthcare for Americans is going up 5 to 6% per year, and that just eats up their ability to get a real wage increase. So not all of this is like just vicious. It's built into a system where no one intended for that to happen, but it's definitely happening.
But Tom, with respect,
Lay
this
it on
isn't
me.
news. This isn't news.
It is news because people do not understand the idea of, people talk about a healthcare crisis.
No, I mean,
right?
we know,
But
that
it's
this is a problem, is what I mean.
But it's a healthcare cost crisis and a healthcare access crisis. It's not a healthcare crisis. This is about money. And the question you have to ask is, why do we pay twice as much as anybody else in the world? Why? That's insane.
All right. Did I cut you off when you were going to say why
No,
we
I'm
were
just
doing
saying,
that?
look,
All right.
the corporations get their way. I said 80% of Americans think that the government doesn't support them. Why do we pay twice as much for the exact same drug as they pay in Canada? And it's illegal to go to Canada to buy it. Why is that true? The reason is because the people in Congress passed that law because drug companies want it that way. And you know, the drug companies, I was just seeing this today. The tax law put $7 billion into the pockets of four drug companies. This year, 7 Bs. Okay, are they going to spend that on research? No. That's going right in their pocket. $7 billion. In addition, they're always talking about we need the money so we can do our research. Really? Because they spend a lot more in marketing than they do on research. So why are we paying twice as much? Because there is paid special interest asking for it. And they're getting it. So when 80% of Americans, including me, think that democracy's been purchased, it's like, look at the drug costs. The democracy's been purchased. Sorry. It's time, and that's why I say, I want to take back the democracy. The American people are not, it is not of, by, and for the people. And that's just not right.
So you covered a lot of ground. All right. You brought up unions and how corporations are taking over. Let's just start there. I'm not sure how we're doing on time, but whatever.
We also want to open it up to questions.
Right, yeah, we will. Yeah, I still got the mic. Yeah, you talk about the unions and how corporations take over. What about personal responsibility? I mean, I've always felt bad for the restaurant where the waiters had to pool their tips, and you got one guy over here who's outside smoking butts and being lazy, and you have somebody else that's really hustling, and bringing in the money. He's got to split it all. I mean, that bugged me. I'm not going to lie. So what about just showing value, and that's how you ascend, rather than?
So let's. You get my point. So let me give you another view on tips. So you guys know how I'm sure you all know how minimum wage works, and that there's a different minimum wage for tip workers. And one of the problems with a different minimum wage for tip workers, which I'm not in favor of, by the way, is that particularly for women, it means you have to put up with a lot of BS. Because you want your tip, and if someone's rude to you or flirts with you or is disrespectful, you can't go like, back off, Jack, because there goes your tip. And so when I think about this stuff, my question on all this, I think I have a different going-in assumption, honestly, Josh, and here's my going-in assumption.
Please.
Americans are the hardest working people in the world, by far. We work harder. If you go to Europe and ask what they think of Americans, they're like, they're insane. They work so hard. I wouldn't do that in a million years. I never worry about whether Americans try hard. I know Americans try hard. I never worry about whether Americans are sincere and good. Americans are sincere and good, genuinely. I think I never question that. I'm never wondering whether people here are compassionate, brave, and good. I know they are. And so when I think about that question, my attitude is, I want people who are tip workers to get paid fairly so they can have a decent life. And it's kind of like, if everybody does it, then there's no way to compete by paying people less. So from my standpoint, I'm a huge fan of sharing the wealth and having everybody rise together, because that's actually what I believe in. And I believe the American people are, I've done 50 town halls in more than half the states, probably 30 plus states. And what I see everywhere is very impressive. is really, it's been the most fun thing I've ever done. And you can go to almost any state in this country and walk out of that town hall and think, I just love those people. They're just fantastic. So we should stop doubting them and start figuring out how to help them.
Okay. How are we doing on time? We go to questions in the audience? I was supposed to have that. We good? I still have some time? Because I go all day. We good? All right. You talked about taking back our democracy. The day after the election, quick story, my daughter was upset. She woke up, found out that Donald Trump had won. She also met Hillary personally, so she felt like she knew her and like wanted to know the president. She was upset because there was a lot of back and forth rhetoric there, and she was a
Also
little
as
bit
a
scared.
woman?
What's that?
As a woman specifically? Or?
As a 14-year-old, well, actually at the time 12-year-old.
Okay.
And the only answer I could come up with is say, you know what, this is kind of what, isn't it a healthy democracy that put Donald Trump in the White House? That's my question.
So here's what I'd say. Look, I don't believe that an outcome that I disagree with that's democratic is a bad outcome. I don't think I know everything. I don't want to be the person who gets to decide everything. I want a fair democracy. Here's what I would say about the election. According to the rules, as far as I can tell, he got elected. There was a lot of, the Russian stuff is clearly the equivalent of electronic warfare on the United States of America by a hostile power. I mean, for everyone who doesn't think Vladimir Putin is a bad guy, he's a KGB guy. He and his friends control 80% of the Russian economy. That's an amazing fact. So if you think he's a good guy, let me assure you, he's not a good guy. He basically electronically attacked us in the last election. I didn't think that was right. I actually am a favor. I truly believe in one person, one vote, and I don't like the Electoral College. Now, partly I don't like it because I'm from California, and no one cares about California because they figure all the votes are going to Democrats, so I never have to show up in California. So you guys get to see everybody, and we get to see nobody. And that's sort of a bummer. So maybe that's me being selfish. But I do believe that what's happened is that presidential candidates don't compete for votes, they compete for states. And so if you're a purple state, they're all over you. They can't promise you enough. If you're a red state, they don't give a hoot about you. If you're a blue state, they don't give a hoot about you. They just compete for the states where they think they can, where they think that they're
Sure,
on the margin.
I
And it just doesn't seem right to me. It should seem to me that in a general election for president, 1,000 people in New Hampshire should be every bit as important as 1,000 people in South Carolina or Michigan or New Mexico. And so when you say that, look, according to the rules he won, I've never protested it. I think there was things done that were wrong, mostly the Russian stuff. But from my standpoint, that's not my, that's not my beef. And I believe in accepting the will of the American people because I think the American people are smarter. As I said, if you do the math, not only do large, diverse groups come up with more just answers, they come up with smarter answers. That's the academic research. The more diverse and the bigger, the better the answers. And I believe in the American people. So I've never said, oh my gosh, my guy didn't win, therefore it must be crookery.
It must be what?
Crookery.
Crookery, understood. I mean, you're in New Hampshire, and I appreciate you being honest about that, because a lot of people feel like doing away with the Electoral College would be bad for the primary.
It would be bad, but it wouldn't change the primary system.
No,
it's
the
just
primary
in the
process,
general.
sure, but it changes the dynamic, right, to a certain degree.
Oh, yeah.
And others would say, I'm not going to debate you. I mean, what am I debating Tom Steyer?
That one wouldn't change. The
slugged.
New Hampshire part wouldn't
Sure.
change.
But if not for the Electoral College, and I hope this is right, someone told me that Abe Lincoln's never president. And that's a problem. So, I mean, they knew something about it. Anyway.
It's funny, I've never
You're
heard that
gonna
argument
pop me
before.
one. I know, I hope that's
We
right.
have to go
so
back
forgive
and
me if it's
Josh,
wrong.
I'm gonna have to
So, yeah, I know. That's why you don't go with one source, especially if they're in the media. Anyway, let's open it up to questions. Thanks for playing along. And you're not playing along. You talk about serious things, and I'm playing devil's advocate. A lot of things that you say, a lot of people obviously feel passionate about, and the fact that you're out there doing what you believe in, it's impressive. So, anyway, let's get to the crowd. Is it me that calls on them, Ann? Okay. Well, let's start with you, sir, right there in the front row. Sorry.
Hi, Tom. Curtis Rude, high school class of 1973. I see from reading your bio on Wikipedia that you were a trustee of Stanford for a half dozen years also. So I'd like to ask an education-related question.
Okay.
My question kind of relates to your aspiration for having politics in the United States be truth-based. What does the educational system in the United States need to do to develop the critical thinking skills in the electorate so that they can recognize when politicians are lying to them, so that they end up not voting in their own economic self-interest, but instead react to the dog whistles that you're seeing in politics today?
Yeah, great question. And what you've been talking about.
So, what can we do? I mean, obviously, I think your question is, what can we do academically to prepare citizens to be more effective in judging candidates? Exactly. So let me say one thing that I think works really well. I think I have 4 kids between the ages of 25 and 30. So they're in a different generation from me. And they've also grown up with people trying to take advantage of them on the web since they were really young. They're used to people trying to fool them. So they're actually pretty good at figuring out. When I said I think that this process brings out an awful lot of truth, or maybe all truth, part of it is people are very sophisticated users of information at young ages because there's so many people trying to BS them. And I think that there's a lot of healthy skepticism that brings with it. What we've seen, we also, as I said, are the largest youth vote organizers in American history. And what we've seen there is that young people, hundreds of thousands of young people, have said to us when we say, why don't you vote? They say, nobody tells the truth. Neither party deals with the issues that are part of my life. My vote doesn't matter, meaning there's not much difference between the parties. And we then have a conversation about that. So to me, to a large extent, it isn't so much that they're not extremely sophisticated users of information and judgers of people. It's more a question of understanding the actual political stuff, which the content of the political conversation as it relates to them. So to me, the question would be, can we have a required course that everybody goes to again to go back to how this system really works, and to be realistic about it and honest, and not do, look, I did take that course, civics, and I think that there was a lot of stuff in there that's true and important, but that also does not deal with the realities on the ground of American politics. And that's what I think is missing, because I actually think when we have the conversation, the choices in American politics are dramatic. There's hugely disparate outcomes based on that choice. Elections really matter for everybody, and particularly for young people. And I think that a course on that would be something so that people could understand, because I think the younger generation, which is the largest and most diverse in American history, will either save this country or not.
Thank you for the question, sir.
Yes.
Ma'am?
Thank you.
Please. Chris. Right there. You, that's right. Hi. Oh, we're pretty close, so I figured.
Hi, thank you very much.
What's your name?
You have been extremely effective.
Oh, thank you. At what?
You have been extremely effective at getting the attention of the American people regarding Trump's behavior, and in your opinion, what should be the result and outcome regarding his behavior, which is impeachment. Having said that, that time has come and gone for that conversation, unless something really gross happens, you know, that we haven't yet seen. I'm not sure what it could be.
You don't have to try to describe.
Right, but you know what I'm saying. Now, because of your effectiveness, what is the message or messages that you can bring going forward that will affect a positive outcome on the next election? Because people, you know, when you answered this gentleman's question, you were very concrete. You said, you know, yes, I understand, and this is how we would fix that or address that issue. You only have, you know, X amount of time.
Yep.
You only have, you know, a voice that can express one concept.
Yeah.
What is that going to be going forward? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
And what's your name?
Susie.
Susie, nice to meet you. So I strongly believe that what's missing in American politics is a coherent, positive vision for us in the 21st century. I think that we are at the end of the vision, the intellectual and moral end of the last vision that has really been successful in organizing the world politically for Americans, which was Ronald Reagan's. And I think that what we're looking for is a new positive vision for what it means to be an American, what we're trying to accomplish together, and how this will be another truly American century of American leadership and American success. So in answer to your question, the message that I believe is missing is that positive vision, and to me, it revolves around the true rights of Americans in the 21st century. And I've tried to think about it. What are the rights that I actually believe in? One of the things I believe in is the right to an equal vote. That we have got to reform our politics to a place where people's votes are equal, not based on money, and where there is no cheating. I think people have an absolute right to health care. And I think the only question we should be asking is, how do we get the best possible health care at the lowest possible price? People have a right to health. The rights we have in the 21st century are different than the rights that were possible to have in the 18th century when this country was formed. And if you look at the Bill of Rights and what people had the right to, they reflected a completely different world than the one we live in. There was no concept of the idea of a right to quality education, but we definitely should have that as a right. When we started the country, in the Bill of Rights, I can't remember which one this is, I think it's the 9th, there was a right not to have troops quartered in your house during peacetime. That is not one of the key rights in America in the 21st century. They were dealing with a completely different situation. I believe we have an absolute right to clean air and clean water. That no one has a right to poison you so they can make money. And I believe that that's a right, and if you look around the United States of America, that would be a change. I believe we have a right to a living wage. And I think if we establish that everybody has those rights in American society, one of the things we'd change is we'd stop thinking about this country as a zero-sum game. Because I think one of the things that Mr. Trump does that I object to the most is the idea that there's just a certain pot of money in this country, and anything that Josh gets comes out of my pocket. So we have to really dislike Josh, because he's taking money out of my pocket and he's taking money out of my kids' pockets. I think if we can establish those rights that I was talking about, then we realize that if Josh does well, that's actually good for the country and it's good for me too. So instead of rooting against Josh because we're in direct competition, you realize that the way we're going to succeed is actually together. That actually the way societies grow and prosper is together, not in a sort of fist fight. And I think I think if we should feel as if a kid in Compton, California, getting a great high school education, going to college and being really productive is just great for the United States of America. And the same is exactly true in Keene, New Hampshire. And the people in Compton should think, if a kid in Keene, New Hampshire does really well, that's great. That's fantastic for me, selfishly as an American. And I want that kid to do really well, and I want to support that kid, and I want that kid to kick ass. And exactly the same for the kids in Compton. And I think when we start feeling that way, we're going to be a lot more prosperous, we're going to be a lot more just, and we're going to stop fighting each other. Because honestly, if you step back for a second and think about it, nobody creates really great things in a fist fight. That is not where you create great value. You create great value by working together with other people. And I think we have somehow gotten into this idea that we should be angry at other Americans for taking stuff away from us, and that is not true. That is not how we're going to succeed. That is not a realistic way to think about the 21st century. And it is not a realistic thing to think that somehow we can have a democratic society where all the money goes to only the richest people. That is a crazy, crazy idea that belongs in someplace else, but definitely not America. And I think we've got to get that vision back, that we succeed together and we root for each other and we support each other.
Let's take a question from a student. Yeah, please, stand up and say your name if you would, please, just so that we can all hear you.
Is it on?
Yeah, it's there. There.
All right. My name is Samantha Corey. I'm a freshman here. I'm also a student ambassador.
A little bit, just a little bit. Thank you.
So my name is Samantha Corey. I'm a freshman, and I'm also a student ambassador for the NHIOP program. And my question would be that you see a lot of the problems arising in France right now between President Macron and the Yellow Vests, and the fact that they believe that he serves only the metropolitan areas, such as Paris. And I feel like there's a big part of that that you saw in the 2016
Definitely.
elections, with a lot of people in the Rust Belt supporting Trump because they believe that, Congress and the president have only been serving people in the cities and not worrying about them. So my question is that, do you think that America could be more properly governed if either America was more state kind of ruled, or if it was divided into smaller areas like you see in a lot of European countries with the smaller countries?
Samantha, where are you from?
Great question.
I'm from Massachusetts, near Fall River.
Okay. So that is a great question, because you're exactly, I agree with your analysis, which is there was and is a gigantic rural-urban divide in the United States, and not only in the country, but within states. So, I mean, we're organizing all over the country, and if you looked at the 3 states that basically people think won the election for Mr. Trump, it would be Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. And we organize in all of them. So we're intimately familiar with them. And in each of those cases, the big cities went very strongly for Mrs. Clinton, and the rural areas went overwhelmingly for Mr. Trump. Overwhelmingly. And it was funny because if you listen to the people on the ground in northern Wisconsin or northern Michigan or rural Pennsylvania in the October leading up to the election, they would come back and say, every yard sign is for Trump. Every physical, piece of evidence about what's going to happen says Trump, Trump, Trump. And everybody at Democratic headquarters was like, don't worry, no chance. So what happened was exactly what you're saying. So let's talk for a second about prosperity in rural America versus urban America, because the prosperity is overwhelmingly in urban America, and you can see it across the country. And that's true, including in red states. There's some red state cities that are doing incredibly well, and where the rural parts of those same states, like Tennessee, Chattanooga, Tennessee, is crushing it. The rural parts of America are not doing well at all. And so, for instance, I'm going to answer your question, but when I was in Iowa, I asked a Democrat who was running for governor at the beginning of 2018, what's the biggest problem in Iowa? And he said, mental health. I said, mental health. Does that mean opioids? Is that code for a lot of people taking opiates? He said, no, that's part of it, but that's not it. I said, is it service people returning from Iraq and Afghanistan with post-traumatic stress? He said, that's part of it, but that's not it, Tom. People are depressed in rural America because they're worried about the future and they don't see how it's going to work for their families. So when I talk to my friends or my old roommates who live in rural America, what I hear is they literally aren't connected by broadband, by decent roads, in any way with the parts of America that are growing and prospering in an information-based society in the 21st century. So when I visit my roommate who lives in the poorest county in West Virginia, who's a retired Army officer, and ask him what's going on in McDowell County, he says, the roads are bad. When you talk about connectivity, you can't survive in this world without broadband. You can't be connected to Charleston, West Virginia if the roads are so bad you can't get there. So when I think about, and this is true in California too, rural California is suffering exactly the same way in an extreme difference. So when I think about rural America, my question is, how do we connect those people to the parts of the world and the parts of America and the industries that are growing and that can grow? And we have to accept that we are going to have to support people going forward in things that can actually work in the 21st century and not try to recreate 1950 and hope that suddenly the coal business is going to be the center of prosperity. It's not. And so, do I care about the people who work in coal mines? 100%. Those people go into a coal mine to get a decent wage in a place where it's tough to get a decent wage, and they know they're going to die early. They know it. They think it's worth it. So I have no disrespect for those people. I mean, they're willing to literally die to support their families. So when I think about this, my question is, how do we connect? Because we can't turn the clock back on the world. But what we can do is support Americans and make it possible for them to be connected to the part of the world that grows. And we actually need to rebuild this society. You know, not everyone's going to be a computer programmer. They don't want to be. It's not what they're equipped to be. And they would like to have a decent wage job. But the good news is we need to rebuild the whole country. So there's millions of net jobs to build a sustainable America. And it's all over the country. So when I think about West Virginia, like, they need to rebuild the roads, literally. They need to build a whole bunch of electronic connectivity around that state that is going to employ a lot of, guess what, electricians, IBEW. There is work to be done around this country to really rebuild us. It's just got to be smart. You know, I look and say, people love to talk about infrastructure. We should do infrastructure projects. It's like, okay, I'm an investor, a professional investor for 35 years. Infrastructure, it's investment. We don't want to do investment. We want to do smart investment. Blowing money on investment in the investment world is considered stupid. Building the wrong stuff and spending trillions of dollars on it is also stupid. Building the right stuff that enables people in rural America to participate, that pulls the country together, that's smart. But just saying we're going to do investments, trust me, that's not, if we build the wrong stuff, we will regret it forever. So actually being smart about how we do it is actually going to be the key.
How are we doing? You okay? Couple more.
People's hands are going
I
up.
know, right?
There's a lot of
I'm terrible
disagreement
at
in
this.
this
Right there in
room.
the middle. Sure, yeah. Sorry.
A lot of, is this working? A lot
Yes.
of Next Gen is
What's your
about
name?
Catherine. My
Hi,
name is
Catherine.
Catherine, and I'm a politics student here at St. Anselm College. I'm also an ambassador for the Kevin B. Harrington Student Ambassadors. Okay. My question for you is, you talk a lot about how Next Generation, or Next Gen, is for the people of my generation. What are 3 things that you'd recommend to someone, a college student like me, to get involved and to impact the political process?
Okay, 3 things. Okay, so number 1, as a citizen of the United States, you gotta vote. You know, I always say to people, elected officials represent voters. Their job is to collect votes, and they really care about it. And if you vote, they pay attention. And if you don't vote, they say they'll pay attention. But actually their job is to collect votes. So young people vote at half the rate of other American citizens, by the way. Largest generation in American history, most diverse generation in American history, get half the amount of respect that you deserve. That's why we want a representative democracy with everybody getting a fair shake, specifically young people. Second thing, I have to say, you know, democracy is not a spectator sport. Being involved in it is the American tradition. I think we felt for a long time, for a bunch of reasons, that was less important. And part of that was we had actually pretty good government. And I think that we're at a place where actually participating, whether that is phone banking, going door to door, just talking to your friends and making sure that they also vote, I think is actually going to turn out to be critical. Because in my viewpoint, participation, broad-based, equally based, is really critical for us to come up with a fair democracy and one that matters. So for young people, voting and getting other people to vote, I think is really important. The last thing I'd say is this. Look, I think we're under the gun, and I could tell you what I think are the truly urgent things, but I think people should ask themselves, I think young people should ask themselves, what are the things that I absolutely care the most about? I mean, I could tell you what I care the most about, and I have 4 kids between 25 and 30. And I think you've got to push on those issues. Because what politicians actually pay attention to is not a poll of what Americans think. And I'll give you an example. There have been times when 92% of Americans want background checks on guns. More Republicans than Democrats want background checks on guns. And that just means that before you buy a gun, you can't be a convicted spousal abuser, a convicted felon, or certifiably insane. People who you probably wouldn't want walking around armed. 92% of Americans, 70% of NRA members want background checks on guns. You can't really bring up background checks on guns in American politics anymore. It's considered off the table. And that's because that 92%, it's not a voting issue. But the gun manufacturers really care about it, and the NRA spends a lot of money representing gun manufacturers and making sure that you can't really bring it up. So what really matters to politicians is when they hear, this is my issue. If you don't do this, I will not vote for you. And I think it's important to ask yourself that and to actually represent that. Because I think we're at a place where what you think about X, Y, Z is nice, but what changes your vote is what elected officials pay attention to. So I think that's the third thing I'd ask people to do is ask yourself, if you really had to turn over your whole card, what is it? And for my kids, as I'd say, I would say they want to, well, I think there are 2 things that they would say. One is they want to believe that people are going to create a better America. That they're not, my youngest son told me, look, I'm not going to vote for anyone who says, I can't make this better. I'm not going to do it. I'm 25 years old. I'm not voting for someone who says, I'm older than you, I'm smarter than you, it's going to stink, vote for me. Not going to happen. I want to believe that we can make this better. And the other thing that they want to believe is they want to believe that the world is going to be habitable. And my daughter wants to quit her job because she's like, I can't go to work and not be working on the climate issue. So for her, she's like, I can't go to work. I feel like there's this existential threat to the future, and I feel like I've got to be contributing to that. It doesn't have to be your issue. But I think that we're at a place, again, in American history where we're in crisis, and we're going to have to rely on ourselves to pull ourselves out of it. And I think in particular, we really need the participation and the thought and the energy and the passion of young people. And I think that's traditionally, that's something that young Americans have done, really young Americans. And, I think I really am fervent in my desire for the young people to participate really heavily and to go with the things they care the most about and to be, unscared and brave in the great American tradition.
Good time for one more. I think we're good. Sorry, sir, but back row. I didn't call anybody in the back row. No. Maybe there'll be a little extra time. Ma'am, please.
Hi. We met earlier.
I know we did. Nice to see you again.
She already had a question?
No, we were actually clipboarding together.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm a politics and peace and justice studies major, and I'm also an ambassador. And going back to what you were saying about healthcare, we were actually talking about this in my American government class today, and my professor asked, do you support universal healthcare? And I do, and I was saying that, people in, every single other developed country in the world has it, and we don't, and I was like, And I mean, we pay so much for it, and like poor people in this country, the health care that they get is awful anyways, and they're like paying a lot. But my professor said that it would raise taxes by like 2 times, so then a lot of people in my class were like, oh, well, we don't want it if it's gonna raise taxes. But I feel like it would be worth it, and also less money in the long run for us. But I was just wondering if you like knew the math behind
Yeah.
that, and like the
This,
next
this is a
time.
great question. And you know, one of the things that's great about going to business school is you learn accounting, which is the most boring thing in the world, but you actually get the answers. And healthcare is a perfect example. Because when you think about a national healthcare system, a single payer system, a lot of the money is going to flow through the government. But the overall money is going to be a lot less. So people keep thinking, oh, it's going to be so expensive. No. We should absolutely insist that the cost of healthcare go down for every American. It may just come out of a different pocket, but we're going to be paying for it either way. So when people say taxes are going to go up, look, the cost of healthcare should cost half as much as what it costs right now. So how could that possibly more, if it costs half as much, how could it be also more expensive? It won't be. The question we're going to have is, how do we get from a system that we put in place after World War II that has a whole infrastructure that's been built up, what is that, almost 75 years? How do we get from that system to a different system that's a single payer? And so, no, I'm not one whit worried about whether single payer or government healthcare is going to be more expensive, because we can look at every other system in the world and they pay half as much as us. We're confusing how much you pay through the government and how much you pay, because everybody should be paying a whole lot less for at least as good healthcare. And I want to say one more thing. Look, people think there is this myth that somehow the private sector is really efficient, that it drives costs down. And let's be clear, that's a model that you learn in Econ 101, which I did take as a freshman in college. So I have learned supply and demand and microeconomics. I've learned all those things. That is not a real world fact. The real world fact is corporations are really efficient at earning money for themselves. And if it's not competitive, then in fact they're really efficient at producing the worst product at the highest price, because that's what makes them the most money if they have a monopoly or a non-competitive situation. So when I think about healthcare, everyone's like, well, it's the private sector, so it's going to be more efficient. It's going to be more efficient at ripping us off. And it's very efficient at that. So when we think about places where you have a non-competitive, think about a monopoly for a second. Let's assume we're running a monopoly, whether it's a public utility or a healthcare business selling to the government or anything else. If you know they have to buy your stuff, if you're the only person supplying energy to everybody in this room, if they have no choice and they need to turn on the lights and turn on the refrigerator and turn on their electric oven, so we know they need us, then we want to provide the worst service, because better service will cost more, and we want to charge the highest possible price. That's the way to be effective and efficient in the private sector if you have a monopoly. So if people are worried that the system we have now is efficient, all you need to look and see is we pay twice as much as anyone else. If you look at, that's how it works in non-competitive systems. Corporations work. And the other question we have is, and drugs are a perfect example, who's making the decisions? Are the drug manufacturers buying the decisions about how the drug manufacturers get treated? And the answer is yes. You know, the last thing I'll say is this. See if this works for you guys. I view America as like this car, like an automobile. And the engine of that car is the private sector. That's what makes us go. But the decision about where to go, the steering wheel should be the democracy, not the private sector. And if you get the private sector deciding where we're going to go, then you get injustice and you get all the money going to the private sector, which is what's going on. But if you get the driver you kind of remember the Flintstone cars where the people run in place? That doesn't work either. The point we have here is we should not be scared about a public healthcare system because we can see that it actually is both, strangely enough, contrary to the myth, the private sector is serving us very inefficiently and very unjustly in healthcare.
We're over time. Real quick, you said at the beginning of this discussion, if you could affect change, well, you'll do whatever will most impact and affect change.
Josh, I see you.
I got to do it. If information tells you the best thing that you can do to impact change and affect change is to run for president in this cycle, do you reserve the right to change your mind?
Look, what I said was, this is what, I am all in on trying to get rid of this president however we can. And I'm still all in to try and get rid of this president. We don't even know who the entire, you guys, there may be people in New Hampshire who have insight, and in fact, I know there are, into who all is running. We haven't even seen the whole field. My question is going to be, I have the luxury of being able to try and do the right thing and not have to worry, because I've saved a bunch of money, about paying for my health care, eating dinner, putting a roof over my head, honestly. So my goal in this is unchanged. I will do anything to get the kind of democracy and the kind of outcomes that I believe are necessary, because I truly believe we're in crisis, and I truly believe the answer to the crisis is the American people. That is my 100% belief, and I believe that if we don't come together around this election, and I think there's a grave chance that we don't, that we are more divided at the end of it than we are at the start of it, that will be a tragedy for us, a true tragedy, and we will be in desperate shape the day after the election if that's the case. And I will do anything to stop it.
Well, your passion alone is inspiring. Thank you very much.
Josh, thank you.
Tom Steyer, thank you. Good to see you. That was great.
Thank you guys so much for coming, seriously.
I didn't know how hard the out was there, so I apologize.
Our staff is ready to try and get you Tom to remember New Hampshire a little bit. I know you've already been here, but.
I love it. It's beautiful. Actually, you ask anybody who I work with, this is how I travel, isn't it? 2 of these bags I can go for a week. It's true.
That was great. That was fantastic.
Thank you. And
I hope
by the way,
you're okay
just so you
with
know,
everything. I had to play the